almost no work can be carried out in any marine environment without a lifting process being involved. It's an essential component of all offshore operations, and just as in good seamanship, the skills and knowledge required for lifting operations have to be gained through experience and training, as well as from the study of written guidance. This film cannot cover all that needs to be known for those involved in lifting operations, but it is an attempt to illustrate essential components. Even when detailed planning is undertaken in a lift, there are still accidents, and some can be fatal. So it's vital that 4 elements are followed as part of every lifting procedure. These are training, assessed and assured competence, procedures and planning, and above all, constant vigilance. The IMCA suite of publications has been created in response to industry needs, and they are being constantly updated. IMCA's principal guide for lifting operations is the document M187, Guidance for Lifting Operations. It was developed for subsea operations, but the principles are relevant to lifting operations anywhere. This film only indicates some of the material contained in M187 and should not be used as if it were the guidance itself. Lifting is vital to most of the work on board a vessel, from lifting of stores and spares through to significantly heavy loads on major construction projects. But as we've said, accidents do happen, and most of those occur in what are seen as low-risk everyday operations. Some call them routine operations. Routine is a friendly, easy-going term, but routine is the friendly killer. Done this 100 times, can do this with my eyes closed. Routine can close your eyes or someone else's for good. The first component of a safe lifting procedure is good leadership, from senior management to all of the lifting team. Different operations could need different sets of personnel, but there should be an identified pool of people on board from which to select the lifting team. And for engineered lifting projects, that identification starts back in the company office. Individual company procedures and job titles vary, but the guidance identifies the key members of a lifting team. An identified responsible person, who might be the vessel's master or a project supervisor, recognizes the need for a lifting activity. He or she then notifies the competent person or looks to appoint a competent person to plan the lifting operation. During the planning of any lift, a technical authority should be appointed to make an informed, technical and impartial judgment of any aspect of the lifting operation. It might be, for example, a senior project engineer or a structural engineer. The competent person should have the skills and knowledge to carry out risk assessments, produce and assess lift plans, conduct pre-lift meetings, select the appropriate lifting equipment and lifting team, and have the ability to organise the lifting operation. The competent person could, for example, be a deck officer, foreman rigger or offshore manager, and M187 lists other examples. The competent person may or may not supervise the lifting operation, but is the focal point of authority for all safety and technical aspects of the lift. The lift supervisor is charged with actively supervising the lift on site. The lifting team should be suitably trained and experienced and be competent for the specific lift planned. The lifting team should attend and participate in pre-lift meetings and carry out inspections of lifting equipment before they use it. And remember, anyone can stop an operation at any time if they're concerned about safety. Lifting teams need to know and observe all appropriate regulations and guidelines. IMCA M187 splits lifts into 2 categories, routine and non-routine. But whatever kind of lift it is, it requires a lift plan. That might be a generic lift plan for what are defined by the company as routine lifts, or a specific one for less routine jobs. But each operation still needs to be individually risk assessed, taking into account all issues and conditions at the time, so that the lifting team can check that the lift exactly matches the chosen lift plan. An auditable paper trail should be established to demonstrate adequate risk assessment and planning. There are a wide range of factors that need to be considered to help categorize a lift as either routine or non-routine. So what is a routine lift? Routine lifts are generally already known repetitive lifts familiar to all of the lift team. A repetitive lift could be, for example, one that's carried out by the same lifting team at least once in every 4-week period. They're covered by a previously prepared job risk assessment and may not need a new lift plan. In routine lifts, the identified lifting team is trained in the use of the specific lifting equipment and knows its limitations. They're competent to complete the entire operation, and all personnel involved are familiar with the written risk assessment and the lift plan. For routine lifting operations, the lift plan could still be reviewed by a competent person and at the pre-lift meeting, and the lift should, as always, be appropriately supervised and carried out in a safe manner. If in doubt, a lift should be considered non-routine. Non-routine lifts are those which don't meet all the criteria for routine lifts. An engineered risk is a typical example. A job risk assessment is needed and a completed lift plan is also required, signed off by the people identified in the relevant boxes of the lift plan. Where a new specific lift plan is required, a pre-lift meeting or toolbox talk should be conducted involving all the relevant parties. The people at that meeting would use the lift plan, relevant drawings and job risk assessment as a basis to summarise the proposed lifting operation. A non-routine lift plan should be prepared by a competent person, if necessary, on site. Of course, the degree of planning can vary greatly depending on the type of equipment used and the complexity of the operation. The plan then needs to be reviewed and approved by another competent person and a technical authority before being reviewed and finalised by the on-site competent person and the lift supervisor carrying out the lift. A post-job debrief gives the lifting team the opportunity to identify lessons learned, good practices and improvements. Any lessons learned noted on the lifting operation should be reviewed by the competent person and subject to action. Feedback could be vital to the next lift, especially if it uses the same or similar lift plan. It's vitally important to pass on anything learned or spotted during the job. During toolbox talks and post-operational debriefings, clear communication is extremely important. In fact, good communications all round are crucial to safety around lifting operations. Poor communications are frequently found to be at the root of operational problems and incidents. Misunderstandings cause accidents. IMCA's guidance M205, Operational Communications, is well worth a read. The guidelines in there are intended to help those who have not received communications training or who work where good practice has not previously been followed. It's also intended to help companies to establish their own communications procedures in line with good practice. There should be a clear explanation of what communication systems are available on any vessel and what backup systems and procedures are in place. It's important that the same timeline is used throughout the vessel. For example, data recorders are fitted to many items of equipment like cranes, and on ship's bridges there are voyage data recorders. All timelines should be synchronized with the bridge time. It's essential that company procedures highlight the importance of a very high level of communications discipline being exercised. There are few better demonstrations of a company's quality than the manner in which it's heard to communicate by radio. Apart from the obvious safety benefit of exercising good communication procedures, radio communications are often heard by other personnel in the field who are not necessarily involved, so a professional standard should be maintained at all times. Personnel should be clear about the use of radio procedure, for example in the use of over at the end of speaking and out when finally completing a communication. Poor radio discipline can lead to accidents. Radio exchanges should be limited to operational matters only. They should be as brief as safely possible, and speech should be clear and precise. Be careful not to speak too quickly. Unclear speech is bad enough, but radio communication can be subject to interference and transmission breaks, thus possibly missing out vital information. Remember, the person you're speaking to may not be working in his own language, so avoid slang or colloquial expressions. In operational areas under oilfield control, there's usually a requirement, which could be statutory, that rigs, platforms and vessels in that area are advised and updated on vessel operations. The usual procedure is for the vessel to advise the field controller and request that all units in the area are advised as necessary. VHF and UHF working channels should be agreed and adhered to, and remember that use of handheld transmitters can interfere with computers within closed or partially closed spaces. That also applies to mobile telephones and any device using radio transmissions. Working channels should be established on radio links, and care should be taken that the channels selected do not interfere with other operations. The inspection of lifting equipment is another crucial link in the safety chain. Inspections are carried out by personnel with enough competence and experience, whereas thorough examinations and the marking of equipment are carried out by a person defined as the Independent Competent Person, the ICP. The ICP is a person who is competent and independent enough to allow impartial and objective decisions to be made concerning the lifting equipment. Companies should have procedures for a scheme of thorough examinations, and that scheme should set out how often and how intensively equipment should be inspected. All equipment and accessories provided should be clearly and permanently marked with their safe working load and unique identification markings. If there's been a change to some equipment or its use affecting its safe working load, only the ICP should be responsible for remarking the equipment. The ICP can advise a company regarding the marking of equipment and can remove from use any equipment not marked in accordance with regulations. All work equipment should be maintained in an efficient state, in safe, effective working order and in good condition through a planned maintenance system. Lifting equipment condition will begin to deteriorate after it's first used, especially in offshore operating conditions, so a process should provide for ensuring work equipment is adequately maintained at appropriate intervals and that work equipment logs are kept up to date. That'll reduce the risk of worn out or defective equipment being used. All relevant data should be recorded as a basis for trend analysis on the overall performance of the equipment. IMCA's guidance provides a sturdy groundwork for establishing lifting procedures. Another example, the IMCA Crane Operator's Logbook for offshore vessels gives a crane operator the chance to demonstrate his experience and the vessel operator a clear idea of the experience of the crane operator. It shows training courses attended, types of crane operated, what types of job and for how many hours, and in what locations. The whole IMCA suite of lifting guidance, in fact, has been readily accepted by contractors and clients worldwide and provides an excellent basis on which to build company procedures and to assist in the training of those involved with lifting operations. We hope that you found this DVD of use and that it may be used as part of other related information on safe lifting procedures. Take care, stay alert, be sure that all your lifts are controlled and above all, safe.